Revenge of the construction workers. I am a teacher, and when I was younger, I would take summer jobs to supplement my income. One summer, I worked for a bricklayer named Jerry and heard an amazing story. I worked for Jerry in the mid-90s, so the story either happened in the early 90s or in the 80s. Here goes. The setting for the story was a community of small rural towns which had only one brick contractor. Jerry began his career as a bricklayer working for this contractor. A real jerk. Jerk and Jerk's son, adult working the business with his father, would harass, belittle, and humiliate all their employees on a regular basis. No work was ever good enough and employees were told they weren't worth what they were paid. Not only did Jerk mistreat his employees, but he was equally rude to other subcontractors and to the general contractors who hired him. Since he was the only bricklayer in the community, there was nothing anyone could do about it. Needless to say, the turnover rate for the brick business was very high. The only person that stuck with Jerk and company was Jerry. Jerry told me that his father had instilled a self-confidence in him that Jerry could do anything he set his mind to do and that he should not evaluate himself according to what others said, but rather by the facts. Although Jerry was belittled by Jerk and Son as were all other employees, Jerry was becoming a very good bricklayer. Jerry knew he was good. Jerk knew Jerry was good. But Jerk didn't know that Jerry knew he was good. Not only was Jerry a good bricklayer, he was very respectful to the boss who disrespected him. Jerk thought that Jerry was a naive pushover who was buying his head games. That would prove to be a huge mistake on his part. One day, Jerry was doing an exceptionally good job of laying brick. Not only was his craftsmanship amazing, he was laying brick at a high rate of speed so that he was making his boss lots of money. Of course, Jerk and Son were belittling his work as though he was doing the very opposite. This scenario was being observed by the general contractor of the project. After work that day, the general contractor asked Jerry to stay behind so he could talk to him, as did every other construction worker in the community. General contractor hated working with Jerk. General contractor told Jerry that he had heard Jerk and Son belittling him, and told him that he disagreed with everything Jerk was saying. He asked Jerry if he had ever considered going into business for himself. Jerry said that he would like to do that someday. General contractor then said that he would loan Jerry the money to buy a mixer, the most expensive piece of equipment needed to start a brick business, if Jerry would indeed start said business. The only hitch was that Jerry would need to pay for the mixer whenever he could and that he would subcontract under general contractor. Jerry agreed to those terms and prepared to begin his new venture. Jerry respectfully told Jerk and Son his plans and gave his notice. The two mocked Jerry ruthlessly and laughed him to scorn. Jerk told Jerry, "You'll be back in 2 months begging to return to your job. You'll never make it as a subcontractor." 2 months later, rather than collapsing as Jerk predicted, Jerry was still in business and going strong. 1 year later, Jerry's business was booming and a drunk Jerk showed up at Jerry's house and begged him to come back to work with Jerk and Son. "Jerry, you're the best employee I ever had." Jerry replied, "Why didn't you ever tell me that when I was working for you?" Jerk couldn't answer the question, and Jerry obviously didn't accept the offer for employment. 2 years after beginning his entrepreneurial adventure, Jerry heard that Jerk and Son went out of business. Jerry said that he never intended to harm Jerk and Son when he accepted general contractor's offer. He said that looking back on things he realized that he had become Jerk's greatest nightmare. "I can't say that general contractor intended no harm. I thought the most amazing thing about the story was how that Jerry maintained his self-esteem in spite of all the ridicule. I also gained a respect for Jerry's father, who instilled an unshakable self-confidence in Jerry. Edit. I contacted Jerry today, after 20 years, to let him know how highly you thought of him. He reminded me that his father was wheelchair-bound and accomplished so much in spite of his handicap. It was his father's overcoming huge obstacles that made Jerk's words seem to be such a minor obstacle to overcome. Yeah, that general contractor knew exactly what he was doing, lol. This story was related to me by my late ex-father-in-law. He was a flooring contractor. Seems there was only one crane/excavator contractor in their neck of the woods. This guy was a drunken idiot who caused all sorts of headaches for the generals. The biggest general decided they had enough of drunken idiot. They offered to bankroll the best people on Drunken Idiot's crew and use them exclusively on their projects. Business boomed and rapidly expanded. Drunken Idiot goes bankrupt and closes up shop. The general knew exactly what he was doing. Damn, Jerry is a great guy, sticking with it. At first I read the opening as, one summer, I worked as a bricklayer named Jerry. And I was wondering if you had been a cashier named Tim. And a waiter named Steve before becoming a teacher. Whoop whoop go Jerry. I appreciate this story. Nothing gave me greater satisfaction than bidding against my old boss. And winning. The best ones were when I bid more. And got the job. I worked for Mr. Boatshoes for 10 years. Then went to work on jobs too small for his company. Eventually I took the work from the steady customers. Who didn't want to buy from a liar? The slick guys in clean polo shirts stuck with him. I had a nightmare boss. He appeared to hate my guts from day one. He never missed a chance to belittle me or criticize my work. Even the way I dressed and talked. He told nasty jokes at my expense. Then said, "Just kidding," with an evil grin. He often screwed me out of vacation and days off. My coworkers looked on horrified and whispered support when it was safe. But I felt helpless. I worked harder and tried to be perfect at all my tasks. Sometimes doing the work of two people. Coming in early and working late. I tried to get a transfer or another job. But Nightmare Boss refused to give me a recommendation. The kiss of death in my field. After 2 years of that I was ready to quit and apply for work hauling garbage. But then Nightmare Boss suddenly left for a better job. New boss arrived and things returned to normal. Then one day new boss called he into his office. I nearly panicked when he said, "Come in disaster plan," and closed the door. Those words usually foretold 15 minutes of screaming about my incompetence. But new boss said, "Hey, I've been going over the personnel files and yours is the weirdest I've ever seen. Your evaluations were all 5s until Nightmare Boss started doing them. Then all your evaluations were 1s and 2s. And your file is full of weird notes. Anyway, I've thrown out all the notes and amended those evaluations because you're the best we've got in this office. I wish I had 10 like you." New boss said more nice things, which I barely heard because of shock. Anyway, by that time I was so burned out on the job that I quit a few months later and moved to the mountains for a couple of years to get my head straight. Lesson to learn. Don't be horrible to your employees and people around you. Be like Jerry. I worked for a bricklayer for a couple years and a similar thing happened. He kept me paid low and told me he'd give me a raise soon. It was always soon. But not right now. One day I was on the opposite side of a glass block window I was tooling, and I overheard him boasting about me to the other mason on the job site. He was making bank on me and I knew it. I have my notice that day, and he kept calling me for the next 2 years to come back. He even saw some of my jobs I had done and complimented me on them. I went from making $12 per hour with a 1-hour commute to making $35 a square per foot laying cultured stone less. Then a year later. That year in between I worked for another company who tried to pull the same garbage on me. Finally got the balls to go into business for myself. You could have ended the story saying that his father gave him confidence stronger than a brick house. Jerry sounds like a great guy who got the break he deserved. General contractor got some nice revenge. I'm still new to Reddit and don't understand what all the awards are. But thanks to all who felt that this story deserved an award. Excellent story. Jerry sure as heck proved his worth. A fantastic example of integrity winning out. Great job, Jerry. Great thing is Jerry would have known a lot of bricklayers to start with. ProRevenge on so many levels. Success is always the best revenge. A drunk jerk showed up at Jerry's house and begged him to come back to work with Jerk and Son. The audacity of this jerk is amazing.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.